Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu salam ala Rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh lil-ikhwani wati fi din. Salamu ala mani taba huda lil-ikhwani wati fi Afrika, Europa, wa America, wa Caribbean, wa kulli makan. Halim wa salim bikum, Andarama, to my fullback community. And this is Sheikh Yahya Shawaka. And my brothers and sisters will show up in the near future. Talking about an important topic about the Sahel region. You see the marquee underneath here. The Sahel. Why it's so important. And it's the epicenter of insurgencies, which has blossomed now into many other parts of our beautiful continent. And the Sahel region, in the weli ngam, it's in the Fulbe language. I just said this is the Sahel is sweet. It is very sweet. It's full of many different things in it that attracts the wrong people to it, and they won't leave these areas because of centuries of getting the riches from us for little or nothing. But here we're talking about a crisis that continues. Now, you remember here 2 weeks ago, I talked about one of the solutions of the insurgencies in West Africa, in the Sahel region, is to give the Mujahideen groups a homeland that they can call for their own, a emirate, Islamic emirate. So that way, it would stop them from annexing and taking wide, vast territories in the Sahel region and beyond, because it's happening, brothers and sisters. As I'm talking now, they're starting to even leave other areas, and they're starting to blossom. And if you remember right, I talked about the giving them in the green there, the Emirat Islamiyah. You see this in Arabic language, give them this, and then we would have MOUs to make sure that we keep them in check, that they do not maraud and they do not do any cross-border raids and ambushes, that they don't annex any more land. That way it will stop all of the violence. And I talked about that last week. And this week I'm going to talk about the second part. 2 weeks ago, I talked about the errors of the ways of the Mujahideen group. But I also talked about giving a solution to our problem in the Sahel region. This week, I'm going to talk about the other element that nobody touches that's causing the insurgencies to be more deadlier and more widespread. And I'm going to be talking about that issue today, inshallah ta'ala. You notice here in this map, brothers and sisters, you see the Sahel region in the yellow. But you see an area way down here in the white, that's Mozambique. The insurgency is even there and is moving westward and is moving north. The Sahel region, if you look over to your right, where Eritrea, the Sahel region, this is for especially the brothers in the West and sisters in the West who don't understand the Sahel region. They think the Sahel region is this one encompassing state, maybe Mali or parts of Mauritania or parts of Senegal. No, it's running from those areas, from the Atlantic to the Red Sea, all the way from there to Eritrea. This is what we call the Sahel. Now you see how big it is. All the vast areas there are insurgents there, Islamic insurgents in this region. Why it's so difficult for anybody to defeat them. And I gave you reasons on why 2 weeks ago and whatnot. But look how big this region is. This stretches further than the United States. So it's very volatile. And now, so I'm going to discuss about the tempestuous government and militia forces and their handlers. They're the second part of this, why we have the insurgencies. Because of the well, how can we the we're concentrating on the Mujahideen, we're concentrating on the Fulani phobic community, we're concentrating on the Tuareg elements, and so forth and so on, and the Hausa elements, and we only talk about what we can do to fight them. But we don't talk about what is the catalyst, why are these groups growing? See, and we never talk about that. We have our think tanks concentrating solely on the Muslims, on the Mujahideen and what they have done. And they're not concentrating on the other elements of this. See, they're not concentrating on that. It's like it don't exist. It's like the Muslims, in the Polacco community, the phobic community, that suddenly men woke up and they decided to hit the desert and join into groups and then start to fight. This is not the case, brothers and sisters. So I think one and all here, I have this here in the phobic language here. I thank all of you who will see this in the future. And I appreciate my brothers and sisters on the continent and the Muslimin, everywhere they may be, and those who are not Muslim and whatnot. But I'm, thank you for supporting me in my talks. And I really appreciate that, brothers and sisters. Now let's talk about this. We're all adults here, especially the brothers, because this affects you more than anything else. I'm going to get to the heart of what is happening here. The second aspect that nobody talks about and whatnot. Here's a Souk, brothers and sisters, a Fulani village. Peaceful, isn't it? The Souks are the same way everywhere in Africa. I don't care if it's Morocco all the way down to South Africa. Our souk, the marketplace, souk, in the Arabic language, means marketplace, a bazaar place where you can go and barter and buy food and so forth. Everybody uses this in Africa. This is a common occurrence. The souk is a place where you go get everything that you want. And so you travel there and you get your wares, or you go there to drink tea, or you go there to socialize with the brothers, and our wives, our daughters, our mothers go to the souk to buy things. Maybe they want some cloth for a new abaya of some sort, and they go meet other sisters there. They go there to shop, but it's a place of sanctuary where people go there. It's an approved activity, and we know this here, Waterall here. We know with this, the marketplace, the place, there's peace and tranquility and so forth and so on. Janri means in the phobic dialect means market. And so here we have the marketplace is very calm, very surreal. You come in there to get food for the family. You come in to stretch out, get out of the house. And whatnot, this is a pleasant time of the day, and you go and you go shop, and so then this happens. We left the tranquility, and our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our brothers, our fathers, our mothers, our children are slaughtered and burnt out. This element here, brothers and sisters, nobody talks about. Everybody ignores this issue as a catalyst, a impetus to the insurgencies. Nobody talks about that. Everybody ignores this region, this element here. So after they bombed my phobic community, The chief of the village, the emir of the village, gets together what's left, and they try to figure out how we're going to rebuild. Our young, impressionable sons now are radicalized because of what has happened. I'm too old to fight. The emir will not give such an order, perhaps, to go and tell the young brothers to go fight. He's too old himself to do anything about it. He's suffering because he lost his wife and maybe his children in this football community that was firebombed and killed. Like what happened about a month ago, 75 in such a situation was slaughtered. So I go to my sons, and we go to our young Fulby community sons, and we go to them and tell them, don't go to the desert and join the groups to go fight. But they're aged now. They decide they can't listen to me. They can't listen to the emir of the village. So they go to join these groups, brothers and sisters. You understand, this is one of the catalysts that causing the insurgencies. They have revenge in their heart because what has happened to them. Here, their mother went to the souk to buy food so she can fix the afternoon meal. And our sons and husbands and so forth, fathers, grandfathers, were out maybe farming, maybe we're tilling the cattle in the Sahel region. Then this happens. And when we see that and we look at this situation, we see something that is horrible. We were invaded, and the death of the innocent is great here. I got in Fulbe language here and in English. So with that backdrop, now you understand what has happened, why we have this insurgency, brothers and sisters. And we have abundance of atrocities that happen to the Fulbe community in particular. So now you kind of have an understanding on how this has transpired and how the Fulbe community has been victimized. And we have an inordinate amount of young men, Fulani men, and some women joining these groups because of things like this. So we are at a point where we have to talk about this issue. If you eliminate these types of things here, you won't have the insurgencies, brothers and sisters. If you eliminate this type of situation here, where you have, where our mothers, our sisters, our wives, our children not even safe in the souk because they can be raided at any time. And there's no recourse for us. We can't go to the police because police don't like us. The Western governments don't care because they're part of the problem. So we have this that graduates to this. If you eliminate this part, you eliminate 3/4 of the insurgency. But this here continues. As we speak today, some Fulani village is being firebombed. Some Fulani village is being attacked and massacred. See, so nobody talks about this as though the Fulbe community, yes, inordinate amount our young men are involved in the insurgency. I talked about that last week. But you have to understand what caused it. I always ask, what caused them to do these things? And I ask each man that will see this in the future, or those you may ask about, you ask them, what would you do? You have to ask that question. If you are firebombed, your family's killed. Who you try to protect them, you cannot. And they were killed by marauders. And not just only that village, other villages along the way as well. Now you can get a picture, brothers and sisters, on what is the catalyst to a lot of these insurgencies as we speak now. The how can I say, okay, there's a three-headed monster, brothers and sisters, that we have to talk about. The three-headed monster that's the catalyst to the insurgencies are inept, corrupted criminal security forces. Not all the police, but there's a corrupted band of these that are funded and so forth and so on. The second part of this is the violent militias. That they're sometimes they're sanctioned to do what they're doing by the government, or sometimes they don't even get sanctioned. They just go to do it anyway, and they target the full Bay community through the Sahel in particular. And then the third part of this three-headed monster is the Western powers, who fund, equip, and train both of these, the corrupted security forces and the militias. And what do they do? What do? They do this. This is what they do. This is the aftermath of this training and funding by the West. This is a catalyst to the problem. We have these insurgencies today. This is a catalyst, brothers and sisters. And I'm giving you food of thought so that way you can decipher. Because many of you, I know, I've read things people wrote. They're tired of seeing the same thing written every time. Mujahideen this. Mujahideen has done this. The Muslims are this. And they are jihadists. And I'll get into this word jihad, a jihadist. I'll talk about that. And we only see one side of this. And we see this terrorism on this part, violent extremism. Wait a minute. Why don't they ever talk about this? Why aren't they in sympathy of this here? The sanctity of the souk, where they go to the marketplace to be bombed out. See, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about that issue. They ignore that. See, they ignore this, brothers and sisters, and whatnot. So I'm exposing it for you to get the understanding what's happening in the Sahel region, why it's so volatile. And the three-headed monster is really it's really I don't know how we can stop it except exposing it. That's the only way, because they want us to be mad at the Mujahideen only, but they don't ask the questions, and they don't, because they know they are part of the problem. They don't want us to know what they're doing to cause the Mujahideen. All the experts around the world know that the Americans in particular profit off of insurgencies. We'll get into that a little bit, inshallah ta'ala. We know that the funding and backing of Western forces and African governments, taking them to account, we should take them to account for aiding and abetting rogue militias, because they are assisting the militias to do what I just showed you to do. And they're ruthless. And then what happens is militias, our sons see this. They say, well, I know who some of these guys are. They're Hausa. Some of these guys are Tuareg. See? And then what do? They go and get machetes that you use to, cut sugarcane or whatever, grass and so forth. And they get guns, and they go to do what? To go to get revenge. Or they meet up with I don't even want to give the names of the Fulani Mujahideen groups. I don't need to give those names. So they go to join those groups in order to get revenge for what happened to their village. You see? So we I'm giving you a picture of showing you what has happened and how it's happened. And there's no talking about the violent extremism of the militants and their radicalization. Nobody talks about that. Yes, the Muslim mujahideen, about their extremism, yes, and their radicalization, yes, but no one talks about the rogue security forces and the militias in particular, and their handlers, who are the British, the Americans, the French, and so forth and so on, the Western forces. Nobody's talking about them. And nobody's holding them accountable for these murderous raids that just killed many in the Polacco community. Adding to this problem, brothers and sisters, we have Tuareg Mujahideen groups too, especially in Mali and parts of Burkina Faso, who have raided and killed Polacco, the Fulbe community, taking their cattle, slaughtered their cattle, you see, causing, again, more radicalization. They had to seek groups in order to fight against the Tuareg Mujahideen groups. You see, this is how this has started and why the cycle of violence is so great, brothers, and why it's spreading. But we know that the focal point seems to be that of the Fulbe community, the Polacco the community is it seemed like to be the brunt of this. And now, since our young men have joined these groups to go fight against the Tuareg Mujahideen, fight against the militias, fight against the security forces, fight against the Tuba who has entered the fray, like in Mali, where you had the Americans was there, you had the French are there, now the Russians are there to fight. See, so you see what I'm saying? There's no cohesion to try to find a solution to bring peace to our continent. Only bloodshed by the bullet is only being offered here. So we know that the militias in particular who burn out these villages, again, sometimes sanctioned by the government, sometimes they're not sanctioned. And they're organized and funded directly or indirectly by the West. They're ultra-violent, criminal, and ruthless. As you see by the picture, they don't care who they kill. They don't care how many houses they firebomb in the Fulbe community. They do it and they kill, and then nobody talks about it and hold them responsible. Especially the marauding from Mali to Niger. Their targets usually are the Polacco people or the Fulani people. This is their target. That's why we have an inordinate amount of young men joining Fulani and other Mujahideen groups. So, again, you know, the Americans are going to each state. I'll go into this to talk about this in a minute. I'll get into this. I'm going to cover a word, jihadist. You've seen this everywhere. Facebook, you see it in newspapers in the West. You see it on YouTube and whatnot. Brothers and sisters, don't use this term because it's wrong. Most of the people who use this have no knowledge of the Arabic language, and they butchered Arabic language, as you know, as they do most of the language in their in history, the Tuba in particular, since it's them who control the media. It's them who butcher the languages of the African people in the Jazeera Arab, wherever they butcher language, and they try to carve out things to make it so to justify killing us. Jihadist is that word. They use this to justify to kill and bomb the innocents, as you see there, our mothers and so forth at the souk. They use the word jihadist. Brothers and sisters, that word don't exist in the Arabic language. I want to let you know that. We have a word called jihad, and it's a word meaning struggle. Jihad, struggle, anything, struggle to pay your bills, struggle to keep your farmland, struggle from drought, and so forth and whatnot. There's many, many terms. None of this mean the way the West has coined it. The man who leaves the house when his house is firebombed and he goes to fight because he has the right to protect his family and his livelihood and his kinfolk. He's a mujahid, fi sabilillah, the cause of Allah. But here's the problem, brothers and sisters. When he leaves that title there and he goes to the Hausa or the Tuareg village to murder innocent individuals, he's no longer mujahid anymore. He is not in jihad anymore. He's now a muharib. He's just a fighter. And he's a mujrim, a criminal. So I want you to understand that so you can get a better understanding when you read all of this nonsense that they call every Muslim a jihadist. A Muslim going to the masjid is a jihadist. A Muslim who sits and reads the Quran, he's a jihadist. They use all these terms to describe us. It's wrong. It's not correct. It's in Islam. It's not right in the Arabic language. And then we look at this. Our village was firebombed. The West don't call this terrorism. But they call me going to the masjid terrorism. They call me talking about this issue terrorism. They call our scholars, our intellectuals, terrorists. Yet, the West who sanctioned this here, of killing of our people, they don't call that terrorism. When they drop bombs into our villages, they don't call that terrorism. That's why terrorism has to be defined and defined correctly, and not only by the Tubab, because the Tubab is behind most of the stuff going on in the world today. And they don't call that terrorism. It's very difficult to have a white face and they call it terrorism. They need black and brown faces in order to call it terrorism. So now, what else is in this? We have Africans all over the place calling for democratic ways and means. It doesn't work. And now the fruits of this hideous labor is starting to come after us now, brothers and sisters. We have this. We have this, brothers and sisters. We have admissions now from the U.S. government that they're funding coups in our area. They're funding groups like the militias to fight against the Fulani, who go to burn out the Fulani villages. And this general who says, we go, and here is the Kayan, the traitor, one of the Africans here who have been trained by this hideous program to overthrow our governments and to go to burn out the Fulani villages. We have one of these corporates right here who is involved in this. And they call this democratic ways and means. Then, on top of that, they use the sword to kill us by funding coups and funding insurrection. Now they're trying to use sexual misconduct as a vehicle to kill us off as well. And now they're causing a burn storm of another sort in Africa because they're trying to force us to accept the homosexual platform. And they're making it rounds through the African governments. See, so this is some of the catalysts, brothers and sisters. You have Muslims who are sitting, and Africans generally, non-Muslims, I don't care if they're Juju, I don't care if they're Orissa, I don't care if they're practicing Obia, if they're practicing Islam or Judaism or whatever the situation. Here in Africa, we are adversely against homosexuality, and we have been as our tradition. But the American government coming in and trying to force us to accept that. And when we don't accept that, then they do this. They go to fund corrupted Africans to fight us, to force us to accept the American style. And the spokeswoman for the president of the United States recently chimed in on this. She said that if we don't accept the homosexual platform that they try to throw down our throats, then we're going to suffer from our lack of tourism. We don't want that terrorism where we bring in their deviant homosexuals into Africa, okay, as a new sexual playground for them. We don't want that. So we don't want that terrorism. You see the picture, what is happening, why we have the insurgencies, why they are so upset. Why are the insurgents fighting the African governments? Because the African governments are involved in this. And they are partial to the Americans and what they're doing. We won't get deep into what has happened, why that is. We won't need to talk about that. It's very obvious. There's a lot of conditions why they are doing what they're doing. And then our governments go to support this. And then our people don't support this. And we have a clash between the government and the people. This is the central thing in the Sahel region, which is in the yellow, and Africa in general. We have this problem, brothers and sisters. See, and so when we have the clash between the governments who are supported by the West, who try to implement the democratic ways and means of the West, they want to introduce homosexuality. They want to introduce whoredom. They want to introduce many different ills that we are against and put that into our countries and legislate to protect it. And when we don't, they fund the coup to overthrow our governments. Now this is out. The courageous people in Congress, they're sitting on a double-edged sword because some of them are saying, yeah, we shouldn't be funding, but they do nothing to stop it either. But they did expose it. They exposed the fact about the U.S. training African coup leaders. It's a shame. Now you understand, brothers and sisters, how we got to the point we're at now. The West is not an equal player. They are not. They are a colonizer. They are basically almost like a cancer in Africa because of what they're doing. Why the African governments are walking away from them. Why the African governments are moving towards Russia. Russia tend to be more lenient and more accepting than the other, the Western countries. And the African leaders are more warming up towards the Russians than they are, and they're starting to get away from the French and the Americans because of this type of stuff here. When they don't do what they tell them to do, they fund the coups against them. When they won't accept homosexuality, they try to overthrow them or have them killed. You see what I mean? This is what has happened. The Russian President Putin, I'm not defending Russia because Russia has some parts of this because now they're in Mali fighting Mujahideen. But we have to say we have some elements that are, lesser of the evil, so to speak. The Russians canceled the African debt. The Americans won't do that. But the Russians did. Putin was on record now saying that he canceled their debt. So that way they don't have to pay back all these loans and everything that they had with them before. You see what I mean? So these are some of the elements, brothers and sisters, giving you the insights on what happened and why we've had this problem. And when we look at Africa in itself, brothers and sisters, okay? When we look at this in itself, what is interesting about this is that I'm trying to find here my notes here. Because I want you to see it too. Where is it at? Okay. Oh boy, I don't know what I did with it here. Boy. Anyway, okay, yeah, here we go. Out of the 57 African states, 25 of them are marred in one or more insurgencies, Islamic insurgencies. Now you look at that map of Africa, you got almost over half of the African states, and it's growing, are involved in insurgencies, brothers and sisters. You have Fulani groups, you have Tuareg groups, you have other groups, Arabs in the eastern part, and so forth and so on. And in the north, and they are fighting against our governments because they're aligned with the West. You see, and then the West, they cannot stand because the West is the one who put all the crazy Islamic evils to fight us. They come in with, they change Islam around. They stop the masjids. They stop the adhans. They go in, they go after our scholars. They do all of this, causing all of this ruckus. It's a mess, brothers and sisters. And then when the Muslims retaliate, they call this terrorism. But when they kill the scholars, they don't call that terrorism. When they jail the scholars for no reason or kidnap their family, that's not terrorism. You see, these are the problems that is causing these insurgencies, and it's growing. The West is causing more of the insurgencies. They're not quelling them, they're adding to it. See, so 25 around approximately of the governments are now doing this. Okay, they have these insurgencies going on, brothers and sisters. It is a serious, serious thing that's happening, and it could spill over into many places. And it's starting to spill over, brothers and sisters, because if we don't do something, we're going to have a serious problem. And if we don't give these people an emirate or some sort, we're not going to be able to stop what is going on. They're going to keep going until they start to take Mali. They're going to be, my personal opinion, the way I see it from the historical standpoint, as a historian, I can see if we don't give them this part here, I can see them taking 3/4, which they already have some portions of Mali already. They already can take Niger and they can take Burkina Faso. Now you look at that. Here's Mali that you see right above where the green is, Mali right there written in the Arabic language. They can maybe even take 1/4 of Mauritania. Now you look how big that emirate will grow, and there would be nothing stopping them. And then they go into north where Algeria is right there. Algeria has some mujahideen already in it. And then Chad may be another candidate for that. You see the picture, brothers and sisters, what I'm talking about. We have an emergency here that we have to find a way, because the mujahideen groups are not accepting what is happening now. And you understand why. They're not accepting that their villages and their kinfolk are being burnt out. They're not accepting our governments and the militia forces coming to kill them and their children and their families. They're not accepting the West come in and feed us filth and take our resources. They're tired of that. They're tired of seeing our women, folks, especially in West Africa, being taken into Europe and into the Jazira Arab to be slaves. And essentially, that's what it is. And sex slaves in markets and homes in Europe and in the Middle East, what we call Jazira Arab. They're not accepting that, so they go fight. Now I'm giving you a picture so you can understand why we have these insurgencies. As a Muslim, I cannot justify what is happening with our mujahideen groups. Our mujahid groups are now involved heavily in this, and they're doing things wrong. As you heard me talk for the last couple of weeks, I've taken them to task on things that they're doing. They're outside the Quran and the Sunnah, okay? But this week, I'm talking about those who are angering them, making them to expand, that nobody talks about. So we have to do something, brothers and sisters, that to quell this violence. And what is happening now, talking is not working. And labeling every Muslim a terrorist or jihadist is not right either. It's not getting us. Into the arena of peace that we all seek. So, brothers and sisters, I'm hoping that you're starting to get a better understanding on what has happened here and whatnot. Because this element here, you have to think about something. 25%, 25 or approximately, are now involved. It's growing, brothers and sisters, on our beloved continent. And I'm going to tell you something else about this. There's another sidetrack to this. The scholarly body, okay, our scholars, the ulama, are being under attack by both groups. The militias and the Western forces go after the intellectuals, because this is what they're ordered to do by the West. Then now the mujahideen groups are mad with us as well. We can't win because we're caught in the middle. The mujahideen groups are angry with us because we chastise them for marauding and doing the things they do. We say, look, you're running outside the sunnah. But we have brilliant statesmen in the ulama who go to the mujahideen groups and they have stopped some from marauding and kidnapping for ransom and so forth. They have stopped some of them. But we're caught in the middle because the West goes after us and calls us terrorists. Many of the scholars can't leave their house because they've hired thugs to put out in front of their house. And the government allows this to happen. They put the thugs out in front of our house so you cannot leave. See? So they don't call that terrorism. When the old man steps out, he can't step out even to go to the souk, to the market, because the thugs they hire will go after him. So the ulama is suffering. The ulama, even to their credit, still talks against the mujahideen groups, but they also talk against the West. But when they talk against the mujahideen groups, then they're good Muslims. But when they go to chide the West for their kufr and their shirk and their criminal activities introducing homosexuality in our countries, then all of a sudden we're terrorists now. See, so this is what I'm talking about, brothers and sisters. Now you can get a better picture on what is happening in the Sahel region, because it's a situation that is pressing, and we need fresh ideas, brothers and sisters, in order to quell the violence. And and the terrorism has to be redefined, because the terrorism is defined by the Tubab, and the Tubab is not easy. He's not a equal player in anything. He only knows one thing: is either he's at the top, he's doing what he wants to do, and that's all it is to it. And anyone who goes adverse to them, they're called terrorists or jihadists. And so you look at this, and we're wrong to fight them. See, that's what they're trying to say, and this is not right. But I brought this all out to you today, brothers and sisters, because I wanted you to get another picture of this, because I know you only see one side is Mujahideen, the Fulani Mujahideen are doing this. Brothers and sisters, something happened to make this situation. Now you kind of get a better picture what has happened. The West funding these groups, the West funding the militias to attack the Polaco community, the Fulani community. Okay, they're aiding and abetting security forces to attack the Fulani communities all through the Sahel. You see, now the Fulani youth are joining the groups they shouldn't join, but they're joining to protect themselves, and then they go to fight against this three-headed monster. And because the Tubab governments control the media, they control the narrative by not talking about what they had done to my village, and to my wife and children, causing my son to join these groups. They don't talk about that. They only talk about my son as a criminal. But what happened? What about what you did to his mother or his sister, his wife, for you funding these miscreant militias who are Africans who've done this? That's why we always say the Tubab governments cannot function in Africa unless they have crooked and turncoat black faces to help them. The Tubab, and some of these things now are starting to come out. As they go to burn these villages, some of the people escape. They witness white faces in cars sitting in the background. So we know that they're military. They don't know if they're British or Americans or French or Russian. They don't know. But they know they saw the Tubab in the background as they begin to escape. When the militias came to hit their village and burn out the souk in the village and so forth and so on, they seen white faces there, Tubab, in the background, giving the orders. See? So this element, brothers and sisters, I talked about today. And I wanted you to get a better picture of this. And you understand that. Of course, they will say that this talk here is wrong. I had to remove the other tape because they butchered my internet. So, of course, it wouldn't look right. They butchered my last speech on this. So I had to remove it. And I'm hoping this one goes through. because they don't want me to talk about this issue here. And I know, of course, and what's going to happen too when I step out of the house, because they always have the miscreants out here in front of the house here to go after me, which I don't. I fight back. I go to the masjid, I fight them back. I take pictures of them, I expose them. But I know who's behind them. Everybody knows that it's the American government behind this. The same way they have done here, brothers and sisters. They're behind this. They fund this. And now they cannot say that it's a lie. They'll tell the African people, we are not doing this. We're fun loving. We don't do anything like this. We're not like that. We want democratic ways and means. Then this is exposed. Look at that. Then this is exposed. They funding these troubles in the Sahel region in particular, brothers and sisters. They're funding it. See? And here they swear to you in your face that they're not behind what has happened to the Fulbe community. They swear to it. We're not this way. They go talk about human rights. They go chastise our African leaders and tell them that they're not doing right. And here's what they're doing behind their back. This is what they're doing behind their back. And then they come back with even more. They come back and then tell you and me that we have to accept their filthiness and their sexual mores under the democratic ways and means homosexuality. So now you understand why there's insurgency. What do we do, brothers and sisters, to get peace in our land? One of the things we have to do is our leaders have to be more forceful and to stop this, stopping their relationships with the West, forcing the West to be equal partners. They won't do that. And the West should not aid and abet them when they decide to go after people in that particular country. You cause an insurgency because you back them. And then the security forces go to, on the word of a Western government, and they go to kill. They have to clean this relationship between them and the two Bob governments. Our African leaders must clean that up in order to quell the violence through our lands. Now we have 25 states out of the 57 marred in Islamic insurgencies. 25. This type of thing here is a catalyst. No Muslim I know of accepts this. None of us. Here in Morocco, I'm going to tell you right now, this won't fly. If they try to throw this down our throats, it won't fly. You'll find, and our governments won't accept this either. I'm just saying. But anything can happen. But I'm telling you right now, I know here in Morocco, they're starch against this. I know in Sudan as well. And in even other parts in the Gambia, the Africans, irrespective of religion, are against homosexuality. They won't accept it. See, so this is something, brothers and sisters, again, that we have to look at, ponder, and try to figure out what we can do. And it's my job to point out certain facts to lead you to think, not only a one-sided way, but to lead you to believe, not to believe, excuse my vernacular, not that way, but to discern and for you to decide, because the Western press is not giving you the truth. They're not telling you. Some of them, like Vice TV and others like this, and the Guardian, they'll give you the truths, irrespective. They'll give you exactly what's happening on the ground. I have to give them, because I read a lot of their material. They're pretty good, especially when you talk about Muslims and in Africa. They're pretty good about exposing wrongs and so forth of the West. So we have to give credit where credit is due. Not all Tubob media circuits are wrong. Like the Guardian is pretty good, and Vice TV, Vice also TV is very, very well in exposing some of this. Okay, they're pretty apt at that. So this is a hard-hitting thing, brothers and sisters, talking about the Sahel region. And I want peace in our land. I want peace on our continent. I want peace in the Sahel region, because my community, the Fulbe community, has been hit hard. And that's why I said here, the Sahel. In the weli, ngam, It's sweet. I just said in the Pular language. It is sweet. It's a sweet land, and it's full of things. And I will give you one more thing about this, brothers and sisters. Let's pull back here. Now let's look at Niger. There's something that you didn't know about. In Niger, there's the French. The French are mining uranium. Why is Niger so poor? They should be rich. Every person should be walking around there in 5 or 6 houses and 10 cars. From the richest, from the French taking the uranium out of the country, and they should be paying market price for it. And they should enrich all of Niger. But Niger is one of the poorest countries in Africa and in the world. And the French was caught there. They were exposed, I forgot what TV stations, showing them mining and showing some of the Frenchmen walking around as though they were kings. They had their own body. The government forces were acting as their bodyguards. This is what causes insurgencies, brothers and sisters. You see, this was the cause of insurgencies. And this Frenchman's walking through the town like he was the king, protected by security forces, while they mine and take out all the uranium that they use for atomic bombs and other things to equip submarines and all kind of other things. They found them in Niger taking this stuff out. You understand why there's an insurgency there in Niger? So now I'm giving you facts for you to discern, brothers and sisters. It's up to you on what you think or not. But at least when you read some filth from the West talking about the Mujahideen and what only about them, you say, wait a minute, why don't we get stories in the West about what they've done about burning out the villages? Why don't we get any stories about exposing the militias and their leaders? Who's funding them? Where are they getting money for all this high-tech military madness that they possess? Who's giving them guns and desert vehicles to go raid in the Sahara and raid the Fulani? Who's doing that? Who's giving them money to do all that type of stuff? There's no stories on those guys. See, no one talks about that. So, brothers and sisters, I'm adamant about this because as a Muslim, we must talk about the rights and wrongs, even if it's against ourselves. 2 weeks, I've been concentrating. The last couple of weeks, I've been concentrating on the Mujahideen and their wrongs. Okay, talking about what they're doing and so forth, and they're wrong. This week, I've covered something about what's propelling them, making them angry, and causing them to be violent. We talked about that and who's behind it. Now you got the evidence. You see it in it for yourself. It's there, even on the television, is now in some of the media circuits showing the West funding these insurgencies by what? Causing government forces and creating militias to go fight against certain communities. I know some brother will say, well, why are they fighting the Fulani? Why are they fighting the Philippine community? As you heard me talk about this many times now, since 7/11, the Polacco community, my community has been in jihad. Fisabilillah, since 7/11. They have been the most staunchest Muslims on this continent. And it goes further than that. Not only that, they went into Andalus, into Spain. You don't think the Tuba knows about this? They know. You don't think they're angry, even though many, but 1,400, about 1,400 years ago, 1,300 years, they know. And they're instrumental in helping to give the name Andalus to Spain because it was an Islamic emirate. The Fulani was catalyst to that. The beautiful sultanates of Morocco were who? The Fulani were behind that as well. You see? So the Fulani, and then the glory years from the centuries of the 13th century to 18th century, we have many of these sultanates and these emirates and so forth, they're Fulani. You get the picture, brothers and sisters? Now the retribution on the Fulbi community is coming down on them because of all the centuries of their jihad. They're bringing Islam to the right Islam into the continent and so forth and so on. So that's why they're easy targets. And they go to kill us in vain. And this is causing the insurgencies, brothers and sisters. Now you get the big picture of it. And I hope that you you are understanding your brother today, what he's talking about. I would entertain any comments, brothers and sisters, on this, because I want you to ponder this. Spread this tape also, especially within the Fulbe community, so you can understand what has happened to you. You don't understand because you live in England now, or you live in Boston, Massachusetts, or you live in Los Angeles, California. You don't understand why the Fulbe community is, so many are now joining the jihad to fight. Now you understand what has happened, what's causing that. And so you get that picture, and now your brother is talking about, he explained to you what has happened. And now some of our brothers who have cameras are showing the raids that are actually happening and the militias who are behind it, because the West don't want to expose that. So we are exposing it here. So my brothers and sisters, this is a hardened talk here during Ramadan. I'm hoping that each one of you have a prosperous, we have half of us through now, and you are greatly appreciated for your support. And I want to thank all of you, you all, for your support. And if you spread the tape, this would be good, because I want as many of the Fulbe community in particular, but Africans in general, to spread this wherever you may be, sitting in the United States or wherever, so you'll get a better picture of what's happening in the Sahel region, brothers and sisters. It's not a one-way street where you have bad Fulani and Tuareg running around, unleashed. Now you understand what made them unleashed, huh? Now you understand. Now you got the picture to see what has happened, who's behind it. See, you see who's behind the atrocities that has happened to the Fulbe and even the Tuareg community, and against the Hausa as well. Now you understand who's behind this. So I thank one of you all for this, for you to come to support me, hear what I have to say, and then to spread this tape. And brothers and sisters, because we all love our continent, we want to see peace. And we have to find viable means to bring peace to our continent. And we do what we can to bring that peace. And we have to talk about the wrongs that we have, and so forth and so on. We have to mend the fences among our African people. We have to do that, brothers and sisters. We must do that. So I'll leave you with what I gave you here, and I'll leave you with the beautiful words of Jinnah. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.